Hello friends, I'm Ellie. Welcome to Cardboard Design. Today, let's listen to the meaningful fairy tales that I am about to tell. First fairy tale, The Golden Bird. In times gone by, there was a king who had at the back of his castle a beautiful pleasure garden, in which stood a tree that bore golden apples. As the apples ripened, they were counted, but one morning one was missing. Then the king was angry, and he ordered that watch should be kept about the tree every night. Now the king had 3 sons, and he sent the eldest to spend the whole night in the garden. So he watched till midnight, and then he could keep off sleep no longer, and in the morning another apple was missing. The second son had to watch the following night, but it fared no better, for when 12 o'clock had struck he went to sleep, and in the morning another apple was missing. Now came the turn of the third son to watch, and he was ready to do so, but the king had less trust in him, and believed he would acquit himself still worse than his brothers, but in the end he consented to let him try. So the young man lay down under the tree to watch, and resolved that sleep should not be master. When it struck 12, something came rushing through the air, and he saw in the moonlight a bird flying towards him, whose feathers glittered like gold. The bird perched upon the tree, and had already pecked off an apple, when the young man let fly an arrow at it. The bird flew away, but the arrow had struck its plumage, and one of its golden feathers fell to the ground. The young man picked it up, and taking it next morning to the king, told him what had happened in the night. The king called his council together, and all declared that such a feather was worth more than the whole kingdom.
"Since the feather is so valuable,"
said the king,
"one is not enough for me. I must and will have the whole bird."
So the eldest son set off, and relying on his own cleverness, he thought he should soon find the golden bird. When he had gone some distance, he saw a fox sitting at the edge of a wood, and he pointed his gun at him. The fox cried out,
"Do not shoot me, and I will give you good counsel. You are on your way to find the golden bird, and this evening you will come to a village, in which 2 taverns stand facing each other. One will be brightly lighted up, and there will be plenty of merriment going on inside. Do not mind about that, but go into the other one, although it will look to you very uninviting."
How can a silly beast give one any rational advice?
thought the king's son, and let fly at the fox, but missed him, and he stretched out his tail and ran quick into the wood. Then the young man went on his way, and towards evening he came to the village, and there stood the 2 taverns. In one singing and dancing was going on, the other looked quite dull and wretched.
I should be a fool,
Said he,
to go into that dismal place, while there is anything so good close by.
so he went into the merry inn. And there lived in Clover, quite forgetting the bird and his father and all good counsel. As time went on, and the eldest son never came home, the second son set out to seek the golden bird. He met with the fox, just as the eldest did, and received good advice from him without attending to it. And when he came to the 2 taverns, his brother was standing and calling to him at the window of one of them, out of which came sounds of merriment. So he could not resist, but went in and reveled to his heart's content. And then, as time went on, the youngest son wished to go forth, and to try his luck, but his father would not consent.
"It would be useless.
Said he,
He is much less likely to find the bird than his brother, and if any misfortune were to happen to him, he would not know how to help himself. His wits are none of the best."
but at last, as there was no peace to be had, he let him go. By the side of the wood sat the fox, begged him to spare his life, and gave him good counsel. The young man was kind, and said,
"Be easy, little fox. I will do you no harm."
"You shall not repent of it,
answered the fox,
and that you may get there all the sooner, get up and sit on my tail."
and no sooner had he done so than the fox began to run, and off they went over stock and stone, so that the wind whistled in their hair. When they reached the village, the young man got down, and, following the fox's advice, went into the mean-looking tavern without hesitating, and there he passed a quiet night. The next morning, when he went out into the field, the fox, who was sitting there already, said,
"I will tell you further what you have to do. Go straight on until you come to a castle before which a great band of soldiers lie, but do not trouble yourself about them. for they will be all asleep and snoring. Pass through them and forward into the castle, and go through all the rooms, until you come to one where there is a golden bird hanging in a wooden cage. Near at hand will stand empty a golden cage of state, but you must beware of taking the bird out of his ugly cage and putting him into the fine one. If you do so, you will come to harm.
After he had finished saying this, the fox stretched out his tail again, and the king's son sat him down upon it. Then away they went over stock and stone, so that the wind whistled through their hair. And when the king's son reached the castle, he found everything as the fox had said, and he at last entered the room where the golden bird was hanging in a wooden cage, while a golden one was standing by. The 3 golden apples too were in the room. Then, thinking it foolish to let the beautiful bird stay in that mean and ugly cage, he opened the door of it, took hold of it, and put it in the golden one. In the same moment the bird uttered a piercing cry. The soldiers awaked, rushed and seized the king's son and put him in prison. The next morning he was brought before a judge, and, as he confessed everything, condemned to death. But the king said he would spare his life on one condition, that he should bring him the golden horse whose paces were swifter than the wind, and that then he should also receive the golden bird as a reward. So the king's son set off to find the golden horse, but he sighed, and was very sad, for how should it be accomplished? And then he saw his old friend the fox sitting by the roadside.
Now, you see,
Said the fox,
all this has happened because you would not listen to me. But be of good courage, I will bring you through, and will tell you how you are to get the golden horse. You must go straight on until you come to a castle, where the horse stands in his stable. Before the stable door the grooms will be lying, but they will all be asleep and snoring, and you can go and quietly lead out the horse. But one thing you must mind, take care to put upon him the plain saddle of wood and leather, and not the golden one, which will hang close by, otherwise it will go badly with you.
Then the fox stretched out his tail, and the king's son seated himself upon it, and away they went over stock and stone until the wind whistled through their hair. And everything happened just as the fox had said, and he came to the stall where the golden horse was, and as he was about to put on him the plain saddle, he thought to himself,
Such a beautiful animal would be disgraced were I not to put on him the good saddle, which becomes him so well.
However, no sooner did the horse feel the golden saddle touch and then he began to neigh. And the grooms all awoke, seized the king's son and threw him into prison. The next morning he was delivered up to justice and condemned to death, but the king promised him his life, and also to bestow upon him the golden horse, if he could convey thither the beautiful princess of the golden castle. With a heavy heart the king's son set out, but by great good luck he soon met with the faithful fox.
I ought now to leave you to your own ill luck,
Said the fox,
but I am sorry for you, and will once more help you in your need. Your way lies straight up to the golden castle. You will arrive there in the evening, and at night, when all is quiet, the beautiful princess goes to the bath. And as she is entering the bathing house, go up to her and give her a kiss. Then she will follow you, and you can lead her away, but do not suffer her first to go and take leave of her parents, or it will go ill with you.
Then the fox stretched out his tail. The king's son seated himself upon it, and away they went over stock and stone, so that the wind whistled through their hair. And when he came to the golden castle, all was as the fox had said. He waited until midnight, when all lay in deep sleep. And then as the beautiful princess went to the bathing house, he went up to her and gave her a kiss. And she willingly promised to go with him, but she begged him earnestly and with tears, that he would let her first go and take leave of her parents. At first he denied her prayer, but as she wept so much the more, and fell at his feet, he gave in at last. And no sooner had the princess reached her father's bedside than he, and all who were in the castle, waked up, and the young man was seized and thrown into prison. The next morning the king said to him,
Thy life is forfeit, but thou shalt find grace if thou canst level that mountain that lies before my window, and over which I am not able to see. And if this is done within 8 days, thou shalt have my daughter for a reward.
So the king's son set to work, and dug and shoveled away without ceasing. But when, on the 7th day, he saw how little he had accomplished, and that all his work was as nothing. He fell into great sadness, and gave up all hope. But on the evening of the seventh day the fox appeared, and said,
You do not deserve that I should help you, but go now and lie down to sleep, and I will do the work for you.
The next morning when he awoke, and looked out of the window, the mountain had disappeared. The young man hastened full of joy to the king, and told him that his behest was fulfilled, and, whether the king liked it or not, he had to keep to his word and let his daughter go. So they both went away together, and it was not long before the faithful fox came up to them.
Well, you have got the best first,
Said he,
but you must know the golden horse belongs to the princess of the golden castle.
But how shall I get it?
asked the young man.
I am going to tell you.
Answered the fox.
First, go to the king who sent you to the golden castle, and take to him the beautiful princess. There will then be very great rejoicing. He will willingly give you the golden horse, and they will lead him out to you. Then mount him without delay, and stretch out your hand to each of them to take leave, and last of all to the princess. And when you have her by the hand, swing her up on the horse behind you, and off you go. Nobody will be able to overtake you, for that horse goes swifter than the wind.
And so it was all happily done, and the king's son carried off the beautiful princess on the golden horse. The fox did not stay behind, and he said to the young man,
Now, I will help you to get the golden bird. When you draw near the castle where the bird is, let the lady alight, and I will take her under my care. Then you must ride the golden horse into the castle yard, and there will be great rejoicing to see it, and they will bring out to you the golden bird as soon as you have the cage in your hand. You must start off back to us, and then you shall carry the lady away.
The plan was successfully carried out, and when the young man returned with the treasure, the fox said,
Now, what will you give me for my reward?
What would you like?
asked the young man.
When we are passing through the wood, I desire that you should slay me and cut my head and feet off.
That were a strange sign of gratitude,
Said the king's son.
and I could not possibly do such a thing.
Then said the fox,
If you will not do it, I must leave you, but before I go, let me give you some good advice. Beware of two things: buy no gallows meat, and sit at no brook side.
With that the fox ran off into the wood. The young man thought to himself,
That is a wonderful animal, with most singular ideas. How should anyone buy gallows meat? And I am sure I have no particular fancy for sitting by a brookside.
So he rode on with the beautiful princess, and their way led them through the village where his two brothers had stayed. There they heard great outcry and noise, and when he asked what it was all about, they told him that two people were going to be hanged. And when he drew near, he saw that it was his two brothers, who had done all sorts of evil tricks, and had wasted all their goods. He asked if there were no means of setting them free.
Oh yes, if you will buy them off.
Answered the people.
But why should you spend your money in redeeming such worthless men?
But he persisted in doing so, and when they were let go, they all went on their journey together. After a while, they came to the wood where the fox had met them first, and there it seemed so cool and sheltered from the sun's burning rays that the two brothers said,
Let us rest here for a little by the brook, and eat and drink to refresh ourselves.
The young man consented, quite forgetting the fox's warning, and he seated himself by the brookside, suspecting no evil. But the two brothers thrust him backwards into the brook, seized the princess, the horse, and the bird, and went home to their father.
Is not this the golden bird that we bring?
Said they.
And we have also the golden horse, and the princess of the golden castle.
Then there was great rejoicing in the royal castle, but the horse did not feed, the bird did not chirp, and the princess sat still and wept. The youngest brother, however, had not perished. The brook was, by good fortune, dry, and he fell on soft moss without receiving any hurt, but he could not get up again. But in his need the faithful fox was not lacking. He came up running, and reproached him for having forgotten his advice.
But I cannot forsake you all the same.
Said he.
I will help you back again into daylight.
So he told the young man to grasp his tail, and hold onto it fast, and so he drew him up again.
Still you are not quite out of all danger,
said the fox.
Your brothers, not being certain of your death, have surrounded the wood with sentinels, who are to put you to death if you let yourself be seen.
A poor beggar man was sitting by the path, and the young man changed clothes with him, and went clad in that wise into the king's courtyard. Nobody knew him, but the bird began to chirp, and the horse began to feed, and the beautiful princess ceased weeping.
What does this mean?
said the king, astonished. The princess answered,
I cannot tell, except that I was sad, and now I am joyful. It is to me as if my rightful bridegroom had returned.
Then she told him all that happened, although the two brothers had threatened to put her to death if she let out anything. The king then ordered every person who was in the castle to be brought before him, and with the rest came the young man like a beggar in his wretched garments, but the princess knew him, and greeted him well, falling on his neck and kissing him. The wicked brothers were seized and put to death, and the youngest brother was married to the princess, and succeeded to the inheritance of his father. But what became of the poor fox? Long afterwards the king's son was going through the wood, and the fox met him and said,
Now, you have everything that you can wish for, but my misfortunes never come to an end, and it lies in your power to free me from them.
And once more he prayed the king's son earnestly to slay him, and cut off his head and feet. So, at last, he consented, and no sooner was it done than the fox was changed into a man, and was no other than the brother of the beautiful princess, and thus he was set free from a spell that had bound him for a long, long time. And now, indeed, there lacked nothing to their happiness as long as they lived. In the story, the prince remains loyal to his task of protecting the golden bird. His loyalty and filial piety are highly appreciated, leading to his eventual happiness. The main character faces numerous challenges in the story, requiring patience and determination to overcome them. His perseverance and determination help him conquer the obstacles and achieve success. Throughout the narrative, several characters demonstrate greed and a failure to recognize true values. In contrast, the main character discerns the value of loyalty and filial piety, distinguishing him from those motivated solely by selfish desires. The second fairy tale, The Little Peasant. There was a certain village wherein no one lived but really rich peasants, and just one poor one, whom they called the Little Peasant. He had not even so much as a cow, and still less money to buy one, and yet he and his wife did so wish to have one. One day he said to her,
Hark you, I have a good thought. There is our gossip the carpenter. He shall make us a wooden calf, and paint it brown, so that it look like any other, and in time it will certainly get big and be a cow.
The woman also liked the idea, and their gossip the carpenter cut and planed the calf, and painted it as it ought to be, and made it with its head hanging down as if it were eating. Next morning when the cows were being driven out, the little peasant called the cowherd and said,
Look, I have a little calf there, but it is still small and has still to be carried.
The cowherd said,
All right, and took it in his arms and carried it to the pasture, and set it among the grass.
The little calf always remained standing like one which was eating, and the cowherd said,
It will soon run alone. Just look how it eats already.
At night when he was going to drive the herd home again, he said to the calf,
If thou canst stand there and eat thy fill, thou canst also go on thy four legs. I don't care to drag thee home again in my arms.
But the little peasant stood at his door, and waited for his little calf, and when the cowherd drove the cows through the village, and the calf was missing, he inquired where it was. The cowherd answered,
It is still standing out there eating. It would not stop and come with us.
But the little peasant said,
Oh, but I must have my beast back again.
Then they went back to the meadow together, but someone had stolen the calf, and it was gone. The cowherd said,
It must have run away.
The peasant, however, said,
Don't tell me that.
and led the cowherd before the mayor, who for his carelessness condemned him to give the peasant a cow for the calf which had run away. And now the little peasant and his wife had the cow for which they had so long wished, and they were heartily glad, but they had no food for it, and could give it nothing to eat, so it soon had to be killed. They salted the flesh, and the peasant went into the town and wanted to sell the skin there so that he might buy a new cap with the proceeds. On the way, he passed by a mill, and there sat a raven with broken wings, and out of pity he took him and wrapped him in the skin. As, however, the weather grew so bad and there was a storm of rain and wind, he could go no farther and turned back to the mill and begged for shelter. The miller's wife was alone in the house and said to the peasant,
Lay thyself on the straw there.
and gave him a slice of bread with cheese on it. The peasant ate it and lay down with his skin beside him, and the woman thought,
He is tired and has gone to sleep.
In the meantime came the parson. The miller's wife received him well and said,
My husband is out, so we will have a feast.
The peasant listened, and when he heard about feasting, he was vexed that he had been forced to make shift with a slice of bread with cheese on it. Then the woman served up 4 different things: roast meat, salad, cakes, and wine. Just as they were about to sit down and eat, there was a knocking outside. The woman said,
Oh heavens, it is my husband.
She quickly hid the roast meat inside the tiled stove, the wine under the pillow, the salad on the bed, the cakes under it, and the parson in the cupboard in the entrance. Then she opened the door for her husband and said,
Thank heaven thou art back again. There is such a storm, it looks as if the world were coming to an end.
The miller saw the peasant lying on the straw and asked,
What is that fellow doing there?
Oh,
said the wife,
the poor knave came in the storm and rain and begged for shelter, so I gave him a bit of bread and cheese and showed him where the straw was.
the man said.
I have no objection, but be quick and get me something to eat.
The woman said,
But I have nothing but bread and cheese.
I am contented with anything.
replied the husband,
So far as I am concerned, bread and cheese will do.
and looked at the peasant and said,
Come and eat some more with me.
The peasant did not require to be invited twice, but got up and ate. After this, the miller saw the skin in which the raven was, lying on the ground, and asked.
What hast thou there?
The peasant answered,
I have a soothsayer inside it.
Can he foretell anything to me?
said the miller,
Why not?
answered the peasant.
But he only says 4 things, and the 5th he keeps to himself.
The miller was curious, and said.
Let him foretell something for once.
Then the peasant pinched the raven's head so that he croaked. The miller said.
What did he say?
The peasant answered.
In the first place, he says that there is some wine hidden under the pillow.
Bless me.
cried the miller, and went there and found the wine.
Now go on.
Said he. The peasant made the raven croak again, and said.
In the second place, he says that there is some roast meat in the tiled stove.
Upon my word, cried the miller, and went thither, and found the roast meat.
The peasant made the raven prophesy still more, and said.
Thirdly, he says that there is some salad on the bed.
That would be a fine thing.
cried the miller, and went there and found the salad. At last the peasant pinched the raven once more till he croaked, and said.
Fourthly, he says that there are some cakes under the bed.
That would be a fine thing.
cried the miller, and looked there, and found the cakes. And now the two sat down to the table together, but the miller's wife was frightened to death, and went to bed, and took all the keys with her. The miller would have liked much to know the 5th, but the little peasant said.
First, we will quickly eat the 4 things, for the 5th is something bad.
So they ate, and after that they bargained how much the miller was to give for the 5th prophesy, until they agreed on 300 thalers. Then the peasant once more pinched the raven's head till he croaked loudly. The miller asked.
What did he say?
The peasant replied.
He says that the devil is hiding outside there in the cupboard in the entrance.
The miller said.
The devil must go out.
And opened the house door. Then the woman was forced to give up the key, and the peasant unlocked the cupboard. The parson ran out as fast as he could, and the miller said.
It was true. I saw the black rascal with my own eyes.
The peasant, however, made off next morning by daybreak with the 300 thalers. At home the small peasant gradually launched out. He built a beautiful house, and the peasant said.
The small peasant has certainly been to the place where golden snow falls, and people carry the gold home in shovels.
Then the small peasant was brought before the mayor, and bidden to say from whence his wealth came. He answered.
I sold my cow's skin in the town, for 300 thalers.
When the peasants heard that, they too wished to enjoy this great profit, and ran home, killed all their cows, and stripped off their skins in order to sell them in the town to the greatest advantage. The mayor, however, said,
But my servant must go first.
when she came to the merchant in the town, he did not give her more than 2 thalers for skin, and when the others came, he did not give them so much, and said,
What can I do with all these skins?
Then the peasants were vexed that the small peasant should have this overreached them, wanted to take vengeance on him, and accused him of this treachery before the mayor. The innocent little peasant was unanimously sentenced to death, and was to be rolled into the water, in a barrel pierced full of holes. He was led forth, and a priest was brought who was to say a mass for his soul. The others were all obliged to retire to a distance, and when the peasant looked at the priest, he recognized the man who had been with the miller's wife. He said to him,
I set you free from the cupboard. Set me free from the barrel.
At the same moment up came, with a flock of sheep, the very shepherd who, as the peasant knew, had long been wishing to be mayor, so he cried with all his might,
No, I will not do it. If the whole world insists on it, I will not do it.
The shepherd, hearing that, came up to him, and asked,
What art thou about? What is it that thou wilt not do?
The peasant said,
They want to make me mayor if I will but put myself in the barrel, but I will not do it.
The shepherd said,
If nothing more than that is needful in order to be mayor, I would get into the barrel at once.
The peasant said,
If thou wilt get in, thou wilt be mayor.
The shepherd was willing, and got in, and the peasant shut the top down on him. Then he took the shepherd's flock for himself, and drove it away. The parson went to the crowd, and declared that the mass had been said. Then they came and rolled the barrel towards the water. When the barrel began to roll, the shepherd cried,
I am quite willing to be mayor.
They believed no otherwise than that it was the peasant who was saying this, and answered,
That is what we intend, but first thou shalt look about thee a little down below there.
and they rolled the barrel down into the water. After that the peasants went home, and as they were entering the village, the small peasant also came quietly in, driving a flock of sheep and looking quite contented. Then the peasants were astonished, and said,
Peasant, from whence comest thou? Hast thou come out of the water?
Yes, truly.
replied the peasant,
I sank deep, deep down, until at last I got to the bottom. I pushed the bottom out of the barrel, and crept out, and there were pretty meadows on which a number of lambs were feeding, and from thence I brought this flock away with me.
said the peasants.
Are there any more there?
Oh, yes,
Said he.
more than I could do anything with.
Then the peasants made up their minds that they too would fetch some sheep for themselves, a flock apiece, but the mayor said,
I come first.
So they went to the water together, and just then there were some of the small fleecy clouds in the blue sky, which are called little lambs, and they were reflected in the water, whereupon the peasants cried.
We already see the sheep down below.
The mayor pressed forward and said,
I will go down first and look about me, and if things promise well, I'll call you.
So he jumped in, splash. Went the water, he made a sound as if he were calling them, and the whole crowd plunged in after him as one man. Then the entire village was dead, and the small peasant, as sole heir, became a rich man. The main character, a small peasant, demonstrates intelligence and creativity to overcome life's challenges. The story introduces the idea that talent and creativity can lead to success and wealth, even when you are in a humble position. The main character uses his intelligence and wisdom to triumph over those who are stronger and wealthier. The story illustrates that sometimes mental strength and innovation can overcome material wealth and societal standing. The main character not only uses cunning to overcome challenges, but also employs resourcefulness to achieve his goals. The lesson here is that, in certain situations, cunning and resourcefulness can be the key to success. This is the end of today's storytelling session. Did you like it? I will bring you more beautiful fairy tales. Please come back tomorrow. Bye-bye.